Record. Welcome, Reckless Wanderers. This is Robert again. After a more than 2 month absence, I wanted to come back to YouTube and give you guys a little bit of an update what happened in that time, why I've been away so long, and what's going to happen in the future with this channel going forward. So as you are all aware, hopefully, Exilecon happened and Path of Exile 2 was announced. And I as well was at Exilecon, and that was like one of the reasons why I couldn't produce any content or play PoE that much in the past for that matter. And just have a little bit of a vlog video upcoming to go through my experiences with Exilecon and also the trip to New Zealand and around that area, and what I did before and what I did immediately after. So this is a bit of a long video. It's going to cover 4 topics really. First one being Exilecon, experiencing it as a non-streamer, just as a participant of one of the 2,000 people that went there. Then what I've been up to leading up to Exilecon, what my actual thoughts are on PoE 3.9 and obviously Path of Exile 2. And finally, if anyone's interested, I have a little bit of a recap of the entire trip. So bear with me, this is going to be a long video. Timestamps will be in the description so that you know where things are happening. So let's get started with the Exilecon. That was not the button I wanted to press. This was it. Because this is probably what you're mostly here for, given the title. This is on the Saturday morning right before the convention. On Friday, the badge pickup started fairly early, so everybody who got there to the convention center could pick up their badges and get their bags. You can see it right here. For example, this was one of the swag bags you got, which had the Exilecon t-shirt. It had the badge, a very beautiful cloth map of Rayclast, which I don't have. I have some of the merch stuff here to show on camera, but this I don't have. And the card game as well, which you probably heard about, which I will go into a little bit later. And yeah, and that's what it was looking like on Saturday. So the first people actually also already arriving in cosplay monture and lining up and eager to go into the convention. Got in. The very first thing that happened was you came in and you saw the merch stand, and everybody wanted to buy merch, like standing in line. Everybody said, "Oh yeah, the first thing I'm going to do is get the merch." But obviously the merch stand was still closed. They were opening it up after the keynote, which made a lot of sense. Instead, what was already happening that Ziggy, Taki, and Crip had the pre-show on the streamer stage at the roots of the mysterious tree that they built there, which was 3 stories high, incredible piece of scenery within the convention center, which set the mood just right, and was pretty amazing to see how much production effort went into transforming the convention center into an area that just looked straight out of PoE. When we got in, I was very early. I got in very early. It was like one of the first 50, 100 people that got in. It was very weird because they had mist machines that blew artificial mist and smoke throughout the entire convention center. It was really dark. Then you had those stained windows with all the art that you know from the Chamber of Innocence, and all the demo PCs were set up where you could already see a login screen, but you wouldn't know what it was, so it didn't say PoE 2 or anything, but you could see that all those demo stations were set up, and they had like 1 bar on each of the levels where you could buy food and get water, and yeah, it was very interesting to get in there and see that how the convention center filled it up. And I was basically standing around close to the streaming stage, so there were no seatings around it. It was just a couch, the desk over here, and then they had 2 sets of cameras on on rails that they could move around, where they could basically film and then stream the entire event from the couch. And it was kind of interesting to see how the guys handled that, because they didn't have any information to begin with, so they could only really speculate what was going to happen during the keynote. And this was still like 40 minutes before the keynote was officially to start. Then went into the theater. There was like a massive countdown still in the theater, counting down. So I left the pre-show a little bit earlier to get a good seat. Managed to sit like one row behind the VIP rows. So the first 5 rows, I think, were reserved for VIPs, where obviously the streamers and the media people and all guests that could get a VIP ticket sit. And yeah, and then this part you all know probably, you have experienced it through Twitch, hopefully, or seen the replay on YouTube, where people said it was a little bit cringy when Einhar got onto stage. I personally really liked it. Being there in person, it was a lot more funny. It dragged on maybe a little bit, but it was a good opener. It's definitely something that we did not expect. Nobody expected, and it was a nice thing that they pulled it off. Actually, with him being the real voice actor that voiced Einhar, that GGG decided to get into the costume. Jay Simon is his name. And I think he did a really good job. More shots from the convention center itself. So on Saturday, I actually did not take too many pictures because I was busy trying to get as many information from the talks and the demonstrations, and also play the game as much as possible. Actually, on Saturday, I only played it once as a witch, and then on Sunday, I played it again as a ranger, and I also got a chance to play the mobile demo and talk to Trevor, which was really exciting to give feedback and also hear his perspective on the development process and on the thought process, what went into and what challenges they had. Given that I also worked on a few mobile projects, it was very interesting to see the comparisons there and to see the parallels, to see the challenges that they face. And I gotta say, it's definitely a ballsy move to do that. Knowing how difficult mobile is. I have like no idea how the mobile gaming world is. I only dealt with like B2B applications and some consumer applications that were nowhere near as complicated as a game. And then obviously PoE as a game is as much as complicated as you can get. So that was very interesting to talk to these people. Finally got to the merch area, which was crazy crowded on the first day. Everybody wanted to buy these things because we didn't know how many are actually available. And given that the queue to the merch stand right after the keynote was longer than the queue to the monsters to play the card game, it was pretty insane. Got a pretty good hunt out of it. So I got 2 pairs of the socks. I got one of the rowers, the stress ball Exalted Orb, which I have at work, and the art book right here. And these are really, really adorable things. I especially love the rower. It's so cute. It's very, very fluffy. So it's not the bones here are actually not spiky at all, and it looks so friendly. It looks like it just wants to cuddle, not dangerous at all. I love it. We christened her Purenga, which is a Maori for lavender, because she has kind of a lavender nose. So that's why we came up with that name. The Exalted Orb I still have at work because it's the Exalted Stress Ball, but I still have the packaging here. And then I have the art book here, which I later used for signing sessions. The socks I have I think they're in the washing machine or drying somewhere, so I can't show them off here, but obviously gotta have the Celestial Cat socks. Yeah, not many more photos to show from the first day, because like I said, I was very busy like going around. I was actually alone at the convention, so I traveled with my significant other, but she's not a part of Exile Player, so she didn't join the convention itself. She gave me, she had a ticket, but actually last minute decided to go to a wine tasting tour. She did give me the cards, so I had 2 sets of the card game. So this is the packaging slightly damaged already because I had it in my pocket all the time, and I still have all the vanilla cards. I mean, by vanilla cards, it's basically the starting set that came with it. So none of this is like in any case special. It's all the very the crappiest items that you could start with. I tried, so I told myself I will at least play to get like a magic item or maybe a rare item and maybe kill like one of the smaller bosses or go against like, I don't know, Aberrath or something. But the queues were so insanely long to kill like anything that was remotely killable. So the zombie, so there was only, I think, I'm not sure, but I think there was only one guy that was a zombie, and he was the only guy you could kill with the starter set. And once you killed the zombie, you had the chance to get some better items to then go against stronger mobs. And anyone else you wanted to go up against was like way too powerful to beat with the starter set, so that was a bit of a problem. And me being there alone and not having really anyone to trade with, but then also wanted to experience all the talks and talk to the developers and talk to the streamers, I had to basically sacrifice something, and then I basically sacrificed the card game. As it was crazy to see other people going super ham on this, collaborating and trading and putting item sets together, and then going really hard on this. I saw some waiting in line for some signing sessions. It was very interesting to see some crazy items that people accumulated and then making up strats of how to go against certain monsters to make sure that their items don't get destroyed. There were other people that were just collecting destroyed items because they wanted to have it for their sentimental value. And yeah, just crazy stuff. And that's probably a takeaway for other gaming companies that want to host conventions or that are at conventions. This card game, this was such a brilliant idea, just to bring people together to talk to each other, not just the visitors of the convention, but also the visitors talking to the developers and vice versa, giving them a chance to interact. This was an absolutely brilliant move. Yeah, after that, after the first day of the convention, so the convention was in the center of Auckland, but there is this place, King Sharka's, that was mentioned in Front Seat Gamer podcast, a podcast that 3 of the GGG members are hosting, and you should totally check it out because it's an amazing podcast. And they had one episode where they talked about food, and they mentioned King Sharka's as a place to go to eat regularly and during lunch break. And this is in Henderson, which is a completely different district to the city center, and it's almost a 1-hour train ride from the city center to get there. But I thought to myself, hey, I'm in New Zealand, I'm in Auckland probably only once in the near future or maybe the far future. I mean, it's pretty much on the other side of the world from Germany. So if I'm here, I gotta try that out, and I got a really amazing burger with some stellar fries. So Front Seat Gamer, if you're listening to this, you were absolutely right. King Sharka's is absolutely worth it. Second day of the convention, I spent less time going to the talks and tried to spend more time actually talking to people and making sure that I meet as many people as possible, and finally got the chance to meet the 3 creators of Diablo and Diablo 2, Eric and Max Schaefer and David Brevik. Also walked across, I have to look up the name again, Jay Simon again, who was still in his Ironheart costume and actually staying in character most of the time when he met with people and talking to people. It was really nice chatting with him. And also then had a really nice conversation with Catherine Kennard, who is the voice actor for Zana, who was obviously also in Zana cosplay. It's so strange to talk to those people, and they speak in that voice that you have known in the game for so many years, and then they happen to actually also look like the characters that they play in the game, and it's very surreal. I don't know, it's a very very strange experience, but it's also in the end you realize, I mean, they're professionals, they're actors, and in the end they're just humans, and they're just people, and it's kind of a weird thing. I don't know. It's really really hard to describe, but definitely very cool to have met these people and to talk to them in person. Obviously, also Amy and Ziggy, talked to Rice, talked to Taki, Azuzara, Mathil. Didn't get a chance to talk to Crip, unfortunately. It was always super crowded, but nonetheless, very cool to talk to so many people that you interact with in Twitch chat normally only, and having the chance to meet them in person and hanging out with them and chatting with them, it's really, really amazing. Also, managed to get one of the rare edition handcrafted Ziggy D cards with a kiss and a custom message on there. Apparently there are only 40 of them, so I was really lucky to get one of those. Went to the talk with the Blizzard founders. Again, very very eye-opening of how all of this went together decades ago, and how it's still going, and how each of them has their own businesses and are still like super active in the community, still living their passion, creating games, and was just really really inspiring to sit in that audience and to experience that talk, and to be actually being able to also ask them questions, and hearing their opinions on various topics around the genre or the gaming industry in general. Also very funny, because you would see the three of them go around in the convention, and also like going super hard on the card game. That was absolutely their passion as well during the convention. So they definitely loved that aspect of it as well. Then, as soon as the convention went to the end, we had the race finals, which was also an insane experience. Sitting there, experiencing this. I've never been to an esports event. I've seen a few back in the days. I watched a lot of StarCraft finals of the pro players. But I've never actually been to a live esports event, and this was the very first one. PoE racing, I kind of watch it when something's happening, but I'm not actively seeking it out. So I would say I'm not really the target audience, but just being there, sitting in this crowd with all the people cheering and all those things happening, and the guys in the front just sweating, and then one overtaking the other, and then vice versa. That was actually very very exciting, and seeing how successful that was. I hope it's going to continue that way, because it's only going to be good for GGG and Path of Exile as a game if the esports aspect of it gains more traction, because this is also where a lot of money in the industry is, and where a lot of attention is, and where there's a lot of opportunities in the market and in that sector. I mean, there's a team. Was it a Counter-Strike team? I think it's a Counter-Strike team in Denmark, if I'm not mistaken, who just had an IPO. So they are now a publicly traded company as an esports team. This is how crazy this is at the moment. So if PoE could benefit from that, that would be definitely awesome. After that, after the convention was over, there was the after party with DJ Shaper, as I like to call him. But before that, we had an amazing meetup with the Front Seat Gamer guys. I mentioned the podcast. So we have Nick over here, we have Severn here in the middle, and Blake sitting over there. These three are hosting the awesome Front Seat Gamer podcast. Link for that also in the video description. You should totally check that out. And they reached out to the listeners that attended Exilecon and said, hey, we can meet at the pizza place and all have a nice pizza, which was also amazing, by the way, and chat about things and meet up. And that was really, really nice to have something to eat right after the very long, very awesome 2 days of convention, and right before the Exilecon party, which happened then at the Sunday night, where they had a DJ that everybody just dubbed DJ Shaper. They had amazing drinks. You had, again, the chance to sit down and talk to so many people. Chris was still being challenged with the card game because he was the Shaper and he pretty much was the last person to beat after you worked your way up through all the minor bosses. And if you beat Shaper, if you beat Chris Wilson, then you actually got hand-signed item from the very, very early days. So there were CDs from the very, very old Path of Exile. I don't know what else they had, but I heard that it was like super valuable stuff from the very early days, from the founding days, that they handed out and signed. And there was a massive queue. There were probably still like 200 people either just trying to get a signature from Chris or to just play him on the card game. And in the meantime, people listened to DJ Shaper, who at some point even played some drum and bass. I think I just exploded your ears, but whatever. But that was pretty interesting. And there was also, can I pause this? There was this one guy. This guy here was, I think someone mentioned he was actually a GGG employee. I'm not sure if this was true, but he was so crazy. He was dancing the entire night from the time the party started at 8 until it ended at I think 11:30. It's supposed to end at 11, but cut him off. We managed to stay a little bit later, and he was there all the time, encouraging people to go to the dance floor and have a dance. That was pretty amazing. Chris had his speech at the end. I actually did never expect that he stayed until like 11:30 after he also has been there for so long and trying to stay on top of everything. But yeah, he was still there giving his speech, and then said that he will continue to sign and to talk to people even after we all had to leave the convention center. And that happened. We were then outside. We had a table there, and they had a chair there. I pulled an office chair out of the convention center and continued signing. And that was actually then also my chance to finally speak to Chris in person, shake his hands, get the signature. It's pretty amazing. I never thought that was actually that would happen, and this was basically the outcome of the convention in terms of signatures in the art book. Then I got basically switch that back over here, the signatures from the Diablo founders, Chris Wilson's signatures, and then the signatures of all the streamers that I was very lucky to meet and chat with. And that was Exilecon in a nutshell. So absolutely amazing experience. Don't regret going there. I would do it all over again, even though it was obviously very expensive to travel to the other side of the world. Absolutely stunning experience, especially given what New Zealand has to offer and how beautiful the country is, and how long I've been involved in PoE is just felt natural to go there for their very first Exilecon and to experience this in person. I was really, really lucky to be able to do that. So what I have been doing until I went to New Zealand, until Exilecon, because I haven't really played PoE much after Blight launched. Like, I was pretty busy with work before Exilecon, before our trip, and also Borderlands 3 came out. So that was basically what I was doing mostly after the first month of Blight. So I played Blight for a bit. Actually, this might have been my first league where I didn't even get a level 90 character. Instead, I just played until like early maps. I played like one or two red maps with I started with a Blight character because Blight League and Blight skill seemed like totally worth it meme-wise, but it was actually terrible. Switched it over to Soulrend, and that went okay for mapping and for bossing, but it wasn't really at all suitable for Blight itself. And yeah, and then Borderlands came out, and I was looking forward for Borderlands for so long now because I actually before I played PoE, before I played Diablo even, I was playing mostly FPS games. I started very early with Duke Nukem 3D. I was a massive Half-Life fan, grinded that like crazy. Played a little bit of Counter-Strike, but not really competitive. Half-Life 2, obviously, loved it. Far Cry, played that a bunch. And after that, kind of stopped caring so much because then I think that was when I discovered that Diablo is a thing, and then I stuck with that, then transitioned into PoE. But I was always keeping dibs on FPSs a little bit, and tried out Destiny 2, got through the campaign, then was pretty not into the end game at all, and yeah, and then at some point, again through Ziggy, found out that Borderlands is a thing. Played through the Borderlands 2 campaign in summer, and after that, just waited until Borderlands 3 came out, and I'm just absolutely loving the game. And I mean, PoE is definitely my main game, but I will always, like, when there's a chance, when I have like half an hour or an hour like to spare, I will definitely do some grinding in Borderlands because it just feels so good. I don't know what it is specifically, but the game has a really nice punch to it. They managed to pull off the way the actual weapon handling feels, and the way fighting mobs feels is just so insanely satisfying. It's mainly because of the feedback that you get from combat. And it's like one specific thing that I find really satisfying, although that might be weird, and that's the way they do their health bars. Like when you when you shred through monsters' health, and the way they animate the health bars. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm just loving it. It might be a weird thing to love about this game, but yeah, it's like a combination of the weapons, the skills, the different weapons that you have to equip when especially if you're running the game with different modifiers in each area, which forces you to change your loadout. That's a thing that I wish that PoE would also have, which is hopefully what we will be getting in PoE 2. That it's definitely less stale, especially since we will be able to play with more sixlings, so we would not be restricted to just one skill and can switch around our skills a lot more, which is yeah, probably one thing why I don't find the end game of Borderlands boring, but why I didn't get into the end game of Destiny so much, because there you basically the weapons don't really, at least when I played it, they didn't really matter so much, and you just got the weapon that had the most DPS. But in Borderlands, you switch it out all the time because map modifiers. So yeah, that's Borderlands. And then to come into PoE 3.9 and beyond, that's the one finding that I had after playing the demo, is something that I actually had a feeling about before, is that I'm not really anymore into the whole speed meta thing. And that's what I especially noticed when playing the demo, is that I enjoy PoE a lot more when it's a bit slower. And I went back today, so this is actually footage from today. I went back to the Soulrend character that I remembered I set up specifically this way. It's an occultist that can play fairly slow and still like go through the entire content without having to rush. It's one thing that I really started to not like about characters that use charges, because you always have to make sure that you are quick enough between packs so that you can chain your charges. You have to make sure that your charges never fall off, right? And you have to make sure that your flask charges as well, so not just power charges and endurance charges and whatnot, but also your flask charges. You're supposed to like never let them fall down. So you basically rush from pack to pack, chaining your quicksilver of adrenaline and having your movement skills up all the time, and then just zooming through the map and killing the entire map in just 30 seconds, which is super efficient. It's like the best way to make money. But in the end, what I also found out is that I don't really play the game to play the economy, and that's why also, like, for 3 or 4 leagues in a row now, I play in Trade League, but I play without purchasing items and without selling items. I just purchase, I just trade for items when I need a build enabling unique, which I can't actually remember when that was the case the last time where I needed something, because I try to play builds where I'm not restricted to uniques, at least in the beginning, and maybe in the end, when it goes towards the end game, I might need a Dying Sun, but then again, I can also just farm Shaper and get it from there. But if I would play a low-life build, for example, I would probably just buy a Chefs instead of farming one, because that would be more convenient. But other than that, I would never buy rare items. Right now I'm always crafting them myself, because it's just more fun, and I'm enjoying the character that I'm playing for much longer, because it feels like I'm working for them. I'm not just getting everything handed out, and I enjoy the game a little bit longer. Unfortunately, in leagues like Blight, and that's also what you're seeing in the background, this mentality doesn't really work so well. So it's not really the best Blight character. But yeah, to get back to slower gameplay, so again, that's something that I realized I really like about PoE 2, that it is a little bit slower. I mean, okay, it is Act 1, you start on a fresh character, but even then, gameplay-wise, it feels so much nicer than current PoE does, because the pace is definitely different. And what I also noticed, I have forgotten how nice and clean the loot looks if you don't have a loot filter. And that's also something that you might notice on the stream, that it looks a little bit like the default filter, which it isn't. So this is also something that I did when I got back. I took some time and modified my NeverSync filter, or not my NeverSync, the NeverSync filter with my sound setup, because I'm using some Diablo 2 sounds in it. And I changed the appearance of currency and rare items to match the original PoE item filter colors or whatever more closely. So it's still not the same. So I still make some changes. The font is a little bit bigger than the Path of Exile default, but it's a lot smaller than NeverSync's. And that's something that I noticed that I didn't even knew annoyed me, is that how cluttered the game looks, with so many items on the ground and with everything being in rainbow colors. Props to NeverSync and his filter. He did an amazing job, and all his filter flavors look amazing. But I don't know, after playing the demo and after seeing how clean the game looks, PoE 2, I think some of it has to do with the way the default item colors are. And I tried to bring that back with the filter, while still keeping the whole functionality of NeverSync's filter. And that is a bit tricky, and I'm still working on it. But once I have it done, I will probably release or like make a release of the filter with the sounds, and then if anybody's interested, they can totally download that. And that's what I'm trying to go with in 3.9. I'm also going to try to play a character that's not Zoom Zoom. It's going to be definitely a bow character because we are entering a bow meta. And yeah, let's see if I can find something that can shred bosses, be relatively fast without having to be Zoom Zoom stressful. So that's the PoE update. And now we're probably like, oh my god, 35 minutes. So very quickly, last point. The remaining summary of what happened on that trip. So for anyone who is interested, what else you do when you travel to New Zealand. So obviously you don't just travel there for Exilecon, you do some other things. For example, if you want to not be completely destroyed by the time zone switch between Europe and New Zealand, you make a stopover in Japan. So what we did is go to Tokyo to see some amazing temples and shrines, to visit the anime district to buy some nerdy anime stuff and to see a lot of anime people, visit the most busy crossing of the world. That's at least what they say, but it actually was rather organized and calm compared to, for example, Times Square in New York. Then went to New Zealand. New Zealand, I have to say, it's insane how surreal everything looks because it's just everything is super beautiful. This is just a random photo out of a bus. So you see actually the bus window there, but all the hills, those rolling hills with all the sheep on them. The grass looks insanely green. So this is without a filter. This is just how green it is. You step on a field of grass and it just looks like that, and it's like, your eyes are like, wow, this is very pleasant. Everything's just super green. Went to a trip up north to Paihia, to Bay of Islands. Further north, this is just a random bay where I had some ice cream. To the very, very north, so this is already in the subtropicals at Cape Reinga, where the Pacific Ocean meets the Tasman Sea, and you think you're on an island that's straight out of Jurassic Park. Go dune sliding there, so for some reason there's some streams and some massive sand dunes, and you can, that is very loud, you can just go into a board and then slide down a 15-meter sand dune and then get your trousers all wet, which is super fun. Got on a boat, traveled to the hole in the rock, which was interesting because the ship we were on actually went through this hole, which was not scary at all. Went to some island with like the most clean water I've ever seen and the most beautiful beaches and rolling hills where we just thought, oh, maybe let's just miss the boat back. Let's just stay here, see what happens, because this is pretty much as close to paradise as you can get. Also traveled south a little bit. So this is south of Auckland. It's a peninsula called Coromandel, where we went down to a beach where they filmed Narnia. So suddenly we were in Narnia, where they also had insanely beautiful bays and beaches. Also one of them where you could take a shovel and dig holes into the sand on the beach, and there was a hot spring because of the proximity to lava, and the lava heats up the spring, and then the spring water rises to the surface. It's almost boiling, but then it cools down because the water of the sea, and then it has a really nice temperature, like 35 degrees, and you can sit in it and enjoy a hot spring next to the sea, which is kind of nice. We went ziplining on an island called Waiheke. Went on a bay cruise in Auckland Harbor. Also went further south to Hobbiton. So obviously, if you are in New Zealand, you should not miss to go to Hobbiton. Again, I thought, like, when you watch The Lord of the Rings, you say to yourself, yeah, that this looks really nice, but 50% of it or 90% of it is probably just photoshopped. But it is not. It's actually, if you go there, it looks so out of this world. It's so insanely beautiful, so well maintained, and if it wasn't for the tourists, obviously, which they actually try to keep their numbers reasonable so you can enjoy the scenery. If it wasn't for the tourists, you would actually think you are in the Shire. It's insane how beautiful this is, and I would totally, if I was in New Zealand again, I would totally go again because it was just so amazing. Green Dragon right there. You get the ale, and there is the so-called Green Dragon. Really, really beautiful. Also very beautiful, but very stinky are some geysers. So this is a national park in an area called Rotorua, where they have these geysers, and there's a lot of sulfur, so it smells really, really bad, but very, very amazing to witness this. Experienced some Maori culture, and went to Maiotopu. Was it Maiotopu? Maybe. I might have not. I might have forgotten what this place was called, but this again insanely beautiful, with all the lakes that had different colors. So one was like super green, the next one was super red or super blue, and yeah, it's basically after that we went straight to hell. Then back to Auckland. Final day of Auckland. Went to the airport. Flew down to Christchurch. Sightseeing Christchurch, went to the biggest mountain in New Zealand, Mount Cook, which is right there at the back, down to Queenstown. In Queenstown, made a stop there, then stepped in a bus again to go to Milford Sound. On our way to Milford Sound, which is a fjord, we stopped at Fangorn. So this is, obviously it's not called Fangorn, but this is the location where Peter Jackson filmed the scenes for Lord of the Rings, where the Fangorn forest was. So Isengard is right there behind this mountain, and this is where the Fangorn forest begins. And then we went into Milford Sound, which was this massive, massive fjord which had millions of waterfalls. We also went to see kiwi birds, but I couldn't take photos because they are in the dark, so obviously you wouldn't see them. So this is a reenactment of what we saw there. In Queenstown, I also went to the mountain bike park to shred some trails, which was insanely amazing. Got some really good food, got some really good wine. We went to see a glacier, the Franz Josef Glacier in the Alps. Also found Moa. I started to have more respect of rowers and how big they actually are. Went to a train ride in Greymouth. So after Franz Josef Glacier, went to Greymouth, stepped into a train and rode back to Christchurch. Stepped into a plane again, flew over to Sydney, spent a few days in Sydney, cruised around the bay, visited the Opera House, visited Bondi Beach, went for a swim, played with the waves, really, really amazing. Went to the Chinese Garden of Friendship and then stepped into a plane again, flew over to Singapore. Spent a day in Singapore in the insane heat, visited the gardens by the bay and the two domes, which were insanely beautiful. Visited the super tree grove that were illuminated in the night. And then, as you know it, 4 weeks have passed and we are back in Germany and it is over. So definitely amazing trip. Best trip of my life. Met amazing people. Exilecon was amazing. Path of Exile is amazing. This video is way too long. I'm very sorry. If you stayed until the end, well done. I will upload more content in the near future with 3.9, I promise. And I will make more build guides for budget, non-trade stuff for the casual player that I am. Thank you very much for watching and see you in Path of Exile.